Hi guys, how are you? A little bit of a different topic today. I thought I would actually stay on a topic that is fascinating rather than talking about people talking about topics. So I'm going right back to the beginning and going back to the Chris Watts case. Now, I just want to precede this video by saying that I don't partake in conspiracy theories. I don't partake in accusing innocent people without a proper trial. I don't partake in sensationalizing murder, especially the murder of children, for financial gain. And this is for me to give us all a sort of level footing. I don't support people who also say that they have some big insider reveal, or someone working on the case who's a big reveal, or someone inside the prison. It's not true. Whoever says that, they don't know any more than you do, and it's all to get views. And I feel very, very strongly about this. And if you feel strongly about me feeling strongly about this, please do leave comments below. If you agree with me or you also feel passionately, then also leave comments down below. Now, I'm coming all the way back to this because my interest has never waned from the Chris Watts murder case. It's only that I wanted to be respectful to the family, and I still continue to do so. But a few questions have been in my mind recently, sort of keeping me awake, that we've all had, because none of this makes sense. None of what happened is resolved or makes any sense, which is where our hunger comes from, trying to understand it. I know I'm going to try and do this all in one take, so please excuse the notes. I've been kind of working hard to try and say the right thing, and if I make mistakes, also forgive me. So I've been thinking about certain things that have sort of stayed with me from the beginning of this entire case, and it's to do with Chris's behaviour, not to do with where he is now, the dynamic of what Shanann did before. We don't know these people, but what I'm trying to stick with is what we do know. And what we do know is that Chris had quite a particular bond with his father, I would say. I think that that's probably true. And what's interesting is the parallels between them both is that they both found themselves in a sort of similar dynamic of family. More of a dominant female partner, a driving person, someone who's a little bit more, wears their heart a little bit more on their sleeve than either Chris or his father. Now, we know that Chris's father had an issue before with drugs, or a specific drug that he then did very well with and came off of. But it's actually quite interesting that when we can't control a situation and we need to find something within us to create emotional change, unless we have the capacity to make emotional change, we will make a physical change, a physical choice, a physical emanation of what needs to happen emotionally. And this is quite common. But Chris's father, it seemed, perhaps would have chosen a path, a physical emanation of maybe being dominated by a female partner, or maybe being a person who is much more on the back foot, who is much more of an introvert. And an introvert struggles, obviously, with being asked to constantly come out. So then if we take that back to Chris, who also was an introvert. Now, this is a man who did not like the camera being in his face at all, and you can actually see his face going red through shame or embarrassment. Now, these are not emotions that Chris likes to feel or liked to feel, and so he was quite an introverted person. And so we see him, when he got to the point of having to make emotional change, which he just was not willing to do, that things weren't working and an option could happen, that change needed to happen within him and his family. Instead, he chose to have an affair, which is again very common. Millions of people do this. We make a choice that probably isn't the most healthiest, but it's what we do in that moment to find a solution to the emotional impact of what's happening. So for Chris and his father, there's quite a similar behaviour there. And when you look at the dynamic of the family, it's actually got little similarities to it. Shanann was very much the driving force in the partnership. We, of course, do not know, and any more surmising of going anywhere deeper would. So Chris gets to a point where he has to make a choice, and he chooses to again make a physical emanation of the emotional problem, which is to get rid of what's causing him the pain, which is his family. That to him makes sense at this point. Now, a person without his traits would think, okay, divorce, that seems to be the logical option. Or any other change in the family. But going back to what I said, that would take emotional growth, and Chris Watts was not willing to do that. He could, perhaps, but he wasn't willing to do that. That's just not how he operates. And he would avoid anything that makes him do such. And also that means Shanann and the family. That means him to also emotionally grow. But when you look at him, he was pretty similar to how he was when he first met Shanann, how he tells us that he was kind of dressed like a teenager. She was dressed like a woman. He sort of arrived on this date like dressed like a sort of boy, and she was all dressed up and dolled up. And it seemed to stay that way when you look at the way he was. He was kind of like a boy, and she was like a woman. So this is another trait of a sociopathic person, is that they will find physical solutions to emotional problems. And he had to get to the point of escaping through something because he wasn't emotionally willing to change. So he went, of course, to an affair. And that still probably wasn't enough, because now he wants all of the emotional pain to go away. And this is when he has to get rid of what's causing it. This is when he has to get rid of Shanann and his family. Now, if we jump sort of to this point where it's quite clear that Chris Watts is on the edge of something, he's got to the point of needing some way of getting out of the situation. Did Shanann know that last holiday that she went on with her friends? Were they all talking about it? She knew that Chris was different. She knew something was wrong. And she also knew of her role in the partnership. And so her strategy was to be an anchor, to anchor him back, whether that be through the pregnancy. I mean, she says that she did it for him, that he wanted the pregnancy, he wanted another child. But we don't know that. He looked pretty shocked when she said that they were pregnant on the Oops, We Did It Again video. But that's a by and by. So she was the anchoring partner here. The anchoring. She was getting the self-help books. She was giving options. She was trying to draw him closer back in. The further he was going away, the more he was distancing himself, the more she was serving as an anchor to show someone, this is what you have. This is what you can be. But it just wasn't Chris. It just wasn't him. It was a person that he was trying to be, and at this point failing. But she may have known, we don't know. Chris had learned to not address emotional issues, so God knows what was going on at that point. But here's the question that this whole video is about, is that I've been so long thinking about this. Now, if this was planned, regardless of whether it's planned actually, if you notice, Chris did not literally make one good or adult decision throughout the entire scenario of him annihilating his family, which just is so bizarre. He did everything wrong. I mean, if you watch my channel, you know that I'm not of the school of other people being involved that night. Other people may be involved. I have no idea. That's not for me to say. But you would think that if someone had planned this, that better things would have been put in place. It was literally like Tammy said, that someone, a child, had just sort of drawn on the walls and got caught. There was no sort of attempt to make good decisions. From the moment that he did it, what he did, to all the way going up to the moment he stepped behind prison bars. It's the same as Scott Peterson, Christian Longo. At what point did they think they were going to get away with it with all the steps that they hadn't taken? All the bad decisions that they had taken. And when you look at what Chris Watts did, putting things in the bin, the sheets, the camera, the loading of it's just bonkers. And there may be an explanation as to why. And it's a frightening explanation, because it means that there isn't just good, evil, or someone else in this scenario. That Chris being a good person, an evil person, or someone else being involved to help him. And it goes back again to being a sociopath. That a sociopath at this point, at the point that Chris Watts is at, where a result needs to happen, they're no longer functioning on a level that we understand. They're functioning on a level that it's somehow destiny now. Now, we could argue that, but that's what's going on in a sociopath's mind. They're no longer in control at this point. Better decisions would have been made, right? And it doesn't mean that Chris gets away with it. That's not what I mean. I mean, it means that he's not good or evil, or someone else is involved. It's that we don't understand that he'll hit the level he's working on at the moment, and that's on a sociopathic level. Yes, he's accountable, but a sociopath right now is doing what is necessary. He's doing what's necessary, which is to get rid of the problem. And this is the thing about a sociopath. A sociopath's empathy disappears with necessity. Empathy disappears with necessity. Now, Chris has been a very kind man to his children up to this point. There's never been any problems that we know of. Every single person he meets says he's a great guy, a nice guy. So how can this happen? Because he's a sociopath. And he doesn't have the ability afterwards to say what happened, because he was functioning on a different level, a level of destiny where there's an end game. Now, normally in a normal person, in an end game scenario, the self-will would click in, the self-will of going, oh, I won't kill them. I will stop here. I will find another way, another route, another direction. But that doesn't happen with a sociopath. But luckily, or not luckily, I don't know, maybe this is how the universe works. But this destiny, this unstoppable sort of steam train that was happening at this point, left little breadcrumbs all the way. And this is going back to my question, that he left breadcrumbs just like Scott Peterson, just like Christian Longo, just like Chris Coleman, for the universe to kind of Pac-Man them out, right? And eat them and find the truth, or a version of the truth. And let me again say, I don't believe that Chris Watts is telling the truth. And it's interesting that when we go back to his two confessions, he still thinks that the little breadcrumbs aren't left, and it's never addressed. So when first and second confession, every time they ask him about the little details, have you noticed about the night, he skims right over those. He can't deal with those. He doesn't understand those. He has no answer for those. Nothing makes any sense. So if we go back to the night in question, I'm trying to figure out how to say this between the first and second confessions, because they're kind of coming back to me. That he says that he woke her up before he went to work, or to work out, either one. She'd had 2 hours sleep, right? So she was still dressed in a bra and t-shirt and knickers, and still had apparently all her makeup on, which seems very odd for Shanann, but there you go. Could she have been got as soon as she comes through the door after her trip? I don't know. Anyway, so first thing he says is that during the scenario that he woke up because they wanted to talk, that she said she wanted to wake up with him. So she is a pregnant woman, 2 hours sleep, and this is a person who says that he had to wake her up because they had to have a conversation. Now, this conversation, if he wasn't intending to do anything, could have been left to the end of the day. Could have been left for a few hours, right? Didn't need to happen right now. But apparently it has to happen right now. which immediately puts the alarm bells ringing because you don't have to have the conversation right now. And then he says that what started things off was, and he told her he wanted a divorce. Again, this is a lie, a complete lie, because the worst scenario for Chris Watts would be a divorce, which is the very thing he's avoiding, which is why he had to get rid of them all. He can't do a divorce. A divorce means that he has to emotionally change. It means that in an adult fashion, he would have to take steps to make that happen. He can't do that. He couldn't even control the money. He couldn't do anything like that. The only reason that he woke Shanann up after 2 hours sleep is to get rid of her, not to have a conversation. And this brings me on to my second point, right? So we know that divorce is not what Chris Watts wanted. It was the last thing he wanted. So then he says that he got on top of her, straddled her. Now, why would you need to get on top of a person to A, have a conversation and even an argument when they're already lying down in a soft bed? She's pregnant. She doesn't have the core strength to do much because there's room for the baby. So why would you straddle someone and get on top of them? I mean, if that's not aggressive behavior, then what is? Considering that she wasn't up walking around and he had to stop her. She was in the bed. So he gets up and straddles her. I don't know whether I believe that or not. I don't know. So all these things are playing on my mind, just like yours. And there are so many questions about that night. And I'd love it if you could give me some questions and your thoughts on this, bearing in mind what I've said. Please don't write to me about someone else being involved, although you may believe that. Write to someone else about that. I'm talking from a purely sociopathic side here, trying to understand the grey here. Because we will never know. We will never know what happened because Chris Watts is a sociopath. And he will never offload or ever explain what happened because he's not able to. Because he wasn't functioning in a conscious way like a normal person. I'm throwing this out there. Okay, now you can believe what you like and I may believe what I like. I'm throwing this out there as an idea because it makes a lot of sense. So any other questions, let me know. And let's discuss this in an adult manner, please. An adult manner. No harsh words, no telling me what you think I look like. I know what I look like. So please, just let's discuss some ideas here. Please, let's not make it get about emotionally heightened arguments. Let's just keep it nice and gentle and respectful for the family. And tell me what you think about this, about what I've said. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day and please look after each other.